this lesson is focused on showing you a quick overview of what Shuriken is capable of doing. This is not gonna be a super in-depth tutorial or anything like that. It's just, me showing you around an already made visual effect that you'll have on the resources available for you to download. So this is gonna be included in those packs. And this is just a quick glance on the capabilities that Shuriken has. How's the look of it, right? Because right now you don't even have a mental map of how Shuriken is supposed to look like. How is it supposed to exist in the Unity ecosystem? So that's what this video is all about. Let's get right into it. All right, so this is Unity. And as you can see, I have already imported the Smoke Bomb Classic. And, it's just a smoke bomb like the ones in Valorant. It's super stylized. It's got a bunch of different elements. So, as you can see, this is a prefab, right? Prefabs on their own are just, game objects that have properties saved to them. And in this case, the prefab has a transform node, a transform component, a particle system component, and then the audio source, which is just this sound effect. So I can deactivate those. Those are not needed at all. But yeah, just keeping the particle system here. And why is a particle system there? This is just because if I remove this particle system, then if I click on this prefab, I won't be able to actually play the effect. To play all the effects that are contained inside of this prefab, you need to have a particle system component inherited on the topmost object of the hierarchy, right? So that's why I'm keeping a particle system there. That's really important, right? This particle system, as you can see, is not doing anything. All of those boxes are unchecked. And even though it says looping and whatnot, this is not doing anything, right? It's just, nothing happening at all. So this is just like a placeholder type of particle system component that lets you play all the particles that are living beneath that one, right? In the hierarchy. So you can see I've got a couple different folders, quote unquote folders there. I'm going to show you more in depth about those later on. But for now, you can see that there's a bunch of game objects inside of that, which when I scroll through them, is going to repeat the effect over and over again. So the thing with this is that if I press on stop, right, I just stopped the particles. Remember that I'm using the hotkeys that I showed you in the Unity Quick Start course. So to play the particles, just press 2, then to stop 3, and to, play and pause, use the number 1. Then I can isolate those by showing only selected. So if I click this, I'm just only going to see those clouds. If I select this one, I'm just going to see that smoke dome. Same with the other smoke domes. So you can see it's just a bunch of layers, like as if this was a Photoshop document or an After Effects document with all the different layers for the effects. For example, you can see this one is just some wind panning through. And by coming here into this create type of general button there, I can click the selection outline and selection wire, and then I can see the outline painted in orange, which is this object that's appearing right here, and the wireframe. So that this is a mesh, right? This specific particle system is spawning one single mesh that's just this cylindrical type of mesh that you can see here on the screen, which is rotated this way. It's got this scale. So, you can find those parameters here. The 3D star size is the scale. The 3D star rotation is the rotation, the orientation. And then you have like the position for, the transform component itself, which you can use to move this particle system around. Now, if I try to rotate this, it's not just gonna rotate, but if I move it around, it's moving and it's sticking there. And for example, if I want to scale, I can also do that individually on each axis, as you can see here. But if I set this to be 1, 1, 1, and then set this to be shape, now I'm not able to scale this using the transform component there. So this is something to take into account. I'm gonna be showing you how to use all of those features later on. But if I go into the renderer node here at the bottom of the Shuriken particle system, you can see render alignment dropdown. In this case, if I set this to be local, now I'll be able to rotate this mesh however I want, which is pretty great. Now, it's just living in the world, and it's not always looking at the camera, which view essentially does, right? It's rotating this to always point the camera at a certain angle, right? So yeah, those are some of the features that Shuriken has. And now let me just show you around some of the other things right here on this prefab. You can see there's an in game object. This in is just a separate type of folder. It's also a placeholder particle system. You can see nothing going on here. So this contains a bunch of effects going on. First, you've got this flash, right? You can see that this is a billboard. This is just a quad that's sticking to the view of the camera, and then it's following it around. And you can, if I disable the wire, yeah, you can see that this is just a simple flash going on, super quick. And then this flare, which is a bigger flash in that sense, it's also like giving that secondary detail. So both of them together do this, right? So you can start to see how by layering different elements using Shuriken, you can achieve different effects in that sense. So for example, the glow explosion is just a super slight glow there, happening there. Then the smoke transition, this is like a sphere, glow sphere. Then got this cool wipe, linear wipe going up. And then the smoke clouds, which are those clouds that are being pushed out. So combined, these are the in effects. And by in, I mean the effects that appear just at the beginning of the effect and then just go away. I like to separate especially effects that have an in transition, a loop, and then an out transition into different folders. In this case, the out transition is actually handled by those effects themselves on the loop. It's not an infinite loop. So that's why I'm just handling those outside of it, not in an out folder. But you can see that if I now try to remove the particle system from the in folder and I play this, it's also okay because all of those elements beneath this master parent, it's just gonna play each and every particle system that's living inside there. So, but if I try to play by clicking on in, nothing will happen. And I'll have to select all of those effects at once and then press play, which is not optimal. I want to see them all without having to go inside each and every of those and selecting them and then pressing play. So that's why I'm gonna just revert. And then I have the particle system back again and I can play all of them all at once. So you can also see that right now, because I have this particle system component there at the master, whenever I stop all the effects, I can press play on the in and it will only play the in. But if I actually revert this and the particle system exists at the topmost level of the parent, this is going to play everything, right? So not just those ones, but also all these other ones, right? You need to be careful with this when you're playing around visual effects because it can be annoying sometimes. And by the way, I know this can be a bit daunting at first for a user that has never touched any of Shuriken's particle systems. So let me know if you have any questions or if you don't understand something specific about this. But I think it's pretty clear to understand that the power of having a placeholder particle system allows you to play different folders at the same time, and depending on where on those folders you have the particle systems, it's going to play one or the other effects, right? So let's just check the other elements that are not the in elements. This is a crowned dark. It's kind of difficult to see, but you can see it's just a bunch of billboards there at the floor. And those billboards, those quads that should be, facing the camera as those flashes that we saw just here, right? Those flashes are following the camera. You can see the squares always facing you, but instead, in this case, they are there at the floor. That's just because this flash and flare here, you can see in the renderer, it's render mode billboard. Billboard is this behavior that allows you to, follow the camera. But if you set this to be horizontal billboard, it's just gonna be existing there at the floor at an horizontal plane, and it's never gonna rotate in any other angle. It's just gonna stick to the floor, and that's about it. That's pretty cool to have some effects happening on the floor. There's a bunch of use cases for those, so just know that this is a thing, this is an option. We've got a bunch more options. So for example, the smoke transition, right now, this is a mesh instead of a billboard or an horizontal billboard, this is a mesh. So as this other dome tube that we saw a couple minutes ago, you can see that it's also a mesh, and you can distribute the mesh differently, and you can give it some different parameters to it. So it's pretty versatile, as you can see. And let's keep going with those. This is a bunch of spheres. It's just a sphere mesh. You can see it's essentially like a sphere mesh that's tweaked, and it kind of swirls while going up. You can do this in Blender. Remember to check the Blender course. And also, there's a bunch of meshes that are rendered locally, like aligned locally. But for example, this smoke edge is always facing the camera. You can see when I'm moving around, the shape of the mesh makes it look like instead of a sphere, this is like a circle, but it's not. It's just a mesh that's also a sphere that's always facing the camera. You can see render alignment facing, and that's just gonna face that specific angle. And if I click this, you can see that this is a sphere indeed, right? This is a mesh, but it's always facing the camera. Then the smoke clouds are a bunch of billboards, also are just quads that are existing in the world and being transformed around, scaled, rotated, and they are always following the location of the camera, right? The rotation like that. And that helps creating some effects such as polymetric effects, because it would be hard to convey that if you would be seeing just a flat plane, but that flat plane stuck flat to the environment. So for example, let me just tweak this so you can see what I mean. So yeah, if I move around right now, you can see what's happening. These effects are disappearing as I rotate the camera. So yeah, you can see that those are like cardboard pieces, stuck to the floor right now. And if I move around, they disappear because I'm watching them from the back, right? We are not rendering in the material the back part of it, because it wouldn't make no sense, because we are always orienting those towards the camera. And so we would never see the back of those faces, right? So we straight away just don't render those. But let's say that I set this to be local because I might want to be able to see the back faces. What I can do is go to the call and then set this to 1, and only the faces at the back will render and not the faces in the front. But if I set this to be 0, all of those, the front and the back, will be rendering. But yeah, as you can see, there's a flat edge there, and that's not optimal. That doesn't give any volumetric look at all. That's why we use, in most cases, the render alignment view in this case, right? Yeah, so I think I covered most of the render module here, but just an example. I'm gonna be going more in depth with that, right? So this is just a brief overview of how an effect can be made using Shuriken. I hope this was not that daunting or that complex to understand. In case you're missing anything, feel free to let me know. And yeah, let's start checking at all of these nodes, starting from this one at the top. Right, let's get right into it.